Welcome to Apple Park. Hello and welcome back to Apple Park. Good morning. Welcome to Apple Park. Good morning. And welcome to Apple Park. Hello. And welcome back to Apple Park. Good morning. Welcome back to Apple Park. Good morning. And welcome back to Apple Park.
This is most of the time.
Wow, that was so cool. Good morning. Welcome to Apple Park.
Good morning. Welcome to SwiftUI for Flutter developers. Today, we're going to supercharge your Flutter apps on iOS with Swift. It's nice to meet everyone. I am Marcus. I'm an engineer at Very Good Ventures.
I'm Sam. I'm a senior engineer at Very Good Ventures.
And let me just tell you, we are so honored today to be talking to you guys at SwiftCon. It's been a dream of ours for a long time to, be on a stage at SwiftCon to talk about Swift.
Marcus.
What's that?
This is Fluttercon.
We made a whole slideshow about Swift.
I think we got off at the wrong subway station.
No, this is a laughing point. We know it's Fluttercon. But it is true. We made a whole slideshow about Swift. Why did we do that, right? Why learn SwiftUI as a Flutter developer? Why even have this talk at all?
And that's because Flutter is dead. I'm sure you've all seen the news, been on Twitter this morning. No, we're kidding. No one killed Flutter.
No, Flutter is very much alive, and Flutter is a great way to build iPhone apps. I don't think anyone here doesn't know that, right? It's one of the first things that Flutter built. So why would you need to learn anything other than Flutter for building iPhone apps? Well, first off, how many people ship to iOS? Just a show of hands, Flutter apps go to iOS. I'm sure it's everyone has done this at least once. That makes sense. iPhone's really popular. In the US, it's about 56% of the market share right now. Among young people, it's even higher. Globally, it's like 28%. So maybe not most, but still dominant. Obviously, the iPhones are popular. I'm telling you guys stuff you already know. In the beginning, when the iPhone shipped, the iPhone interaction looked like this. You'd open an app, you'd do something in your app, and then you'd close it and open up a different app, or you'd put it away, right? It was for like 10 years. It was a really one-channel interaction. You just open apps, you use apps. It invented kind of the modern app culture, and that's how it was for a long time. But that's changing. That's been changing for 5 to 10 years, depending on where you start. Arguably, it first started with the Apple Watch in 2015, because now you can take functionality from your main app, put it on your wrist, and you can do actions. You don't actually have to take out your phone and use it. In 2018, Apple bought a company and then rebranded it to Siri Shortcuts. If you never use shortcuts, they're like discrete actions in your app, and you can link them together. You can set them to automate for certain triggers, like when you leave home or whatever. So it's a way to use your app without actually opening the app. In 2020, we got app clips, which are kind of smaller, condensed version of apps. You can get them with an NFC tap or a QR code scan for like a single action, like a checkout flow or something, so that people don't have to download your whole app to use your app. In 2020, we got home screen widgets. This was a big one. At the beginning, they were just informational, like you couldn't do anything with them, and they were only on the iPhone to start, although they eventually made it to iPad, Mac, Apple Watch even this year, so they're kind of everywhere now. 2022, we got live activities in the dynamic island. So that's kind of a mix between a widget and a push notification for like a discrete event. So maybe like you place an order and it updates the status, or you're tracking like the score of a sports game. If you have that little notch at the top, they call it the dynamic island now, the cutout. So it can update with information passively. Also in 2022, we got lock screen widgets. Just brought widgets to a new place, and you don't even have to unlock your phone to see information from your app. 2023, we also got standby mode, where when your phone is charging and horizontal, your widgets and live activities and stuff can kind of be presented in this nightstand kind of interface. So it's another way people can interact. 2023, widgets became interactive, so like in reminders, you can check on off a list, or you can control your lights right from your home screen. And then just earlier this year, we got controls. Actually, this just shipped in iOS 18 on Monday. So now these are like little tiny widgets. The example they showed on stage was forward. You could unlock or lock your car door, and you can also trigger them with like an action button and some other ways. So these are pretty new, but again, another way to interact. And then the kind of big one this year, obviously Apple Intelligence, still hasn't come out yet. It's in beta, and even the cool stuff is not even in beta yet. But the idea is you'll be able to take actions across apps, link it all together, just with your voice using Siri. Again, it's an unfulfilled promise right now. We'll see if it's that cool when it releases, but it could be a big shakeup to help people use your apps because they don't have to open them anymore. So as you see, there's a lot of features. I asked earlier how many people ship to iOS. Pretty much everybody raised their hand. How many people have done all of this? Right? No one, obviously. I haven't done any. How many have shipped any of these in a Flutter app? Okay, none of us, right? None of us are using these new features. And I think that's kind of maybe a problem, right? I think that users, it's not new anymore. Like home screen widgets came 4 years ago. It's not new. Users kind of expect this. But as a Flutter community, we don't build them, really. It's pretty rare. The thing is, users are expecting these features. They don't care if it's written in Flutter, right? We can't tell them, hey, it's a Flutter app, so it's not quite as easy to integrate this stuff. You know, they don't care, right? And they shouldn't, by the way. They just want their app to work, and they expect it to work in the way that they want it to work. And so, yeah, I even think, is this a reason why some people are hesitant to adopt Flutter? Because they hear stuff like, well, they can't even do home screen widgets, or they can't even do live activities. You know, I think that happens, right? So as a community, we wanted this talk to serve as a way to say you can build these features. You do have to learn a little bit of Swift to do it. And so today we're going to talk about how to use Swift and SwiftUI, which is Apple's kind of UI framework on top of Swift, to supercharge your Flutter apps for all these features. Sam's going to show you how.
Okay, so like Marcus said, adding just a little bit of SwiftUI to your existing Flutter apps is really going to up the user's experience and set your app apart from a lot of the other apps that are on the market. So when we talk about though as a Flutter developer, it can be a little bit intimidating. You know, the idea of learning a whole new framework just to add small features into your app. But it's actually a lot easier than we even thought when we started. So there's a lot of similarities between the two frameworks that make it so simple. So starting off at a language level, both Dart and Swift share a lot of key principles like null safety, type safety, asynchronous programming, things that are going to make converting your logic from Dart to Swift very easily. Your problem-solving skills are going to translate really well. They're both open source, so you get that community support, and they're both easily customizable, whether it's through extensions or macros. Nudge, nudge at the Dart team. At a framework level, the developer experiences are actually very, very similar. Both are modern declarative frameworks that make building your UIs very simple. Both are cross-platform, even if SwiftUI is just across Apple's platform. It's still nice to have that singular code base shipped to multiple devices. They both have things like conditional rendering and the ability to preview as you go, whether it's Xcode's preview function or the hot reload with Flutter. So now I want to go into some code examples. So this isn't going to be a tutorial on how to use SwiftUI. It's more just going to be what is that developer experience going to be like as you start to pick up Swift. So taking a look at our most simple example, we all know how we do a hello world in Flutter, stateless widget using a scaffold and then our text object. In SwiftUI, it is equally as simple. So here we have a struct, which with Swift, you'll use both structs and classes, but when you're declaring your views, you'll just stick to structs. You don't need to worry too much about that. And then you'll see you can name it. Similarly, we've got our hello world, and then a colon, which you can imagine the same as the extends key. So we have a struct hello world that's extending our view, and that view is just SwiftUI's equivalent to a widget. So most things in SwiftUI are those view components. Moving down, you'll see we have our body and then another view, which returns that text object. And so you'll notice that the text object is in curly brackets inside that view. And what that is SwiftUI's view builder. So you can essentially imagine that as like a getter for the body property or the child property. So you could have a return key in front of the text object, but it's just not required with SwiftUI syntax. Moving on to a bit of a more complex example, we have here a scrolling list that has a list of coffees and then their descriptions, as well as a button that will add it to a cart. So in Flutter, we know we start with a stateless widget with a list view on the inside that iterates through our coffee list. You might put a column inside of that with two text objects, one for the title and one for the description, and then maybe wrap that in a row with your add button and a spacer between the two. In SwiftUI, we'd start very similarly. We have our view, and then as a child, we have our list, and that is also iterating through our coffee list and giving access to that individual coffee object. Syntax there is a little bit different, but it works very similarly. So inside that, we'll return a VStack, which you can imagine like Flutter's column. And inside that, we have our text children. So you might notice that underneath our text, we have the dot font. And what that is a view modifier. So in SwiftUI, instead of adding a lot of parameters, they'll use these view modifiers, which are functions that just return the view with the respective changes. So whereas in Flutter, we might pass a text style object as that style parameter, we just use view modifiers here. And similar to modifiers in Flutter, you can chain these and have multiple view modifiers one after the other. So moving on, we would then take that VStack and wrap it in a H-stack. And so that H-stack you can imagine like a row, and then we just add our button with a spacer between. Very similar to our Flutter syntax. So as you probably saw from that example, a lot of the widgets that you're comfortable with in Flutter have their corresponding widgets in SwiftUI, whether it's some of those core layout pieces like we saw with the column and the rows with our stacks. You also have some user interaction widgets like buttons and toggles and text inputs, as well as some of the more complex views like the progress indicators, drop downs, and sliders. All have corresponding widgets that are easily transferable on the SwiftUI side. So it's stuff like this that's going to make building views in SwiftUI fairly simple as a Flutter developer, because there's not a whole lot of relearning that you have to do. So now I want to talk about state management, which I know nobody in here probably has any opinions about. There's no hot takes. You know, we in the Flutter community just don't really care about state management. No, obviously I'm kidding. So what I am not going to talk about are different state management solutions. I just want to talk about what's available out of the box for SwiftUI to handle some of those stateful views that you might come across. So we're all probably familiar with the typical counter app. You've got a counter variable, and that's getting updated with the buttons. And in Flutter, we might use a set state every time the user pushes one of those buttons so that the view knows to rebuild. In SwiftUI, there's actually no difference between a stateful view and a stateless view. There's no need to mark that. You use just a regular view, and then in order to tell the view to update and rebuild itself, you just use a state variable. And so to do that, it's really simple. You take your counter variable just like you normally would, and you'd add that state property onto it. And so what that state property is just telling the view that it should watch that counter and update as it changes. So that means on our button press, all we have to do is change that variable, and the view will know automatically to rebuild and display the new value. And then the last thing that we have to do is display the value. And so we could just do that similarly to Flutter and use string interpolation. And so you'll see here we use a slash and then the parentheses, whereas in Flutter we might use the $sign. Now the $sign is used in SwiftUI, it just has a different purpose, which we'll go into in a minute. So let's take that same counter example and say we want to break out the buttons that are changing the value. So to do that, we might make our button row view and have the parent counter view. So if we were doing this in Flutter, in order to update the parent and tell it to rebuild as the child widget, change that value, we might pass a set state function in as a callback to the child so that the parent knows to rebuild. In SwiftUI, it's a lot simpler actually. All you have to do is use this binding property. And so what binding is in SwiftUI is, you can think of it like a two-way connection between a parent and a child. So the child can update a value and the parent will know about it automatically and will know to rebuild, and vice versa. So you can think of it just as a getter and a setter that both the parent and child have access to. So the way that we do it in the code is just by adding this binding variable down in our child view, and we just use that binding property. And so that allows us to send a binding variable in our parent. The way to actually send the variable as binding, we just use the $sign like we talked about earlier and put that in front of our counter. And so now the parent knows to rebuild and display the new value as the child changes it. Lastly, I want to talk about environment objects. An environment object is just any data that's shared throughout the view hierarchy. You might have noticed in our past examples there was no concept of context or build context in the SwiftUI examples that we've shown. So that's because you can just use the environment property to pull those that data from the view hierarchy. So in this example, we're pulling the dark mode or light mode from the environment, and this tells this view how to build, and then we'll update as that changes throughout the app. So you can also add in your own data into the environment and pull it similarly here, and it will update throughout your app. Very similar to inherited widgets or the way we use build context. Okay, now we want to get into a little bit of a demo.
Awesome. So when we thought a demo for this talk, we obviously wanted to show off some features that are specific to iOS. We also wanted to go back to our roots. I was actually a barista for a long time. I have photo evidence of my time as a barista, and we wanted to tie this into coffee apps. I've built a few of them actually over my years. And so we decided to make a coffee app for really the best coffee shop in the world. I know we have some Caribou people here, so it's hard to say, but this is really, you probably have never heard of it. It's called Very Yummy Coffee. By the way, that is the best logo AI can generate. It's beautiful, I think. Hank, our unicorn there. So yeah, we made an app for Very Yummy Coffee. I'm going to be the barista, so I'm actually going to go over there and make some coffee. And Sam's going to I'm just going to set up our demo here. Let's see. Perfect. All right. You're good to go here, and then. Okay, great. Awesome. And you guys should use that mic. Sorry. Yeah. All right. So I just have a little display of like the orders coming through on this laptop here. This is supposed to be an iPad, and then we forgot the iPad, so here we are. But picture this is a nice screen on like a barista counter.
All right, so I am Very Yummy Coffee's first customer. So I will open up the app. Now our app is purely Flutter. So I am going to order a latte and a bagel. So I will add that to my cart and place the order. So if I pull down from the from the home screen, you'll see that I have this live activity that's started. So this is telling me as the customer where my coffee and my bagel are in our order progress. So this is telling me that my order has been confirmed.
And I saw it pop up, so I just marked it in progress on my screen, and
Oh, and now I know that we are so close to getting our coffee. Marcus is working on it. Also, if I go to my home screen, you'll see that I have the dynamic island displaying both our logo and the coffee bean. And if I pull that down,
oh, you got a long press on it.
there we go.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry, guys. We can see that same view.
Perfect. Well, I'm done with your coffee, so I'm going to say it's ready for pickup.
Oh, and then we get to see the updated progress there, and as well as our live activity. So I know that I can go ahead and pick it up from Marcus.
Perfect. And then when I mark it as picked up, assuming, I guess I don't have coffee for you, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Maybe
That's all right. But you can see once he marked it and it was complete that the dynamic island is no longer there.
Yep,
So
it
that
goes
is
away.
empty.
So that's the live activity. That's how they work. Let's talk about a little bit how we implemented it. And that's you.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Okay. So we've talked a little bit about what the Swift code looks like. Now we want to talk about what actually went into getting this on the screen. It's really not a lot of code. So in order to display that live activity there's really just two main components. The first component that you'll see is this activity configuration, which is inside our widget configuration. And you'll see that we're using a widget here instead of a view. That's not to be confused with Flutter's widget. In SwiftUI, a widget is anything that is outside of your main application. So the live activities, the dynamic islands, those are examples of widgets versus a view. So in this activity configuration, you'll see that we have access through the context to our order status, and that order status is getting pulled from Firebase. So Marcus will go through a little bit about how we're actually getting that data into the app, and then we take it and we pass it to what we named our expanded view. So that expanded view is just a custom view that we built in SwiftUI, which is displaying down at the bottom. The second component that we had to build was the dynamic island. So the dynamic island is just comprised of different regions. So you just say what widget or what view you want to show in each widget, in each region. So here we've just noted the bottom and the leading because that's all we wanted to display. But there are other regions you could put your views in. And then lastly, we have when your dynamic island is compact, you can have something on the left and the right of the island, which we are displaying our unicorn image and the progress view. And then if it's being shared with another app, it's considered minimal and you get one or the other, where we're just displaying the unicorn. So this is all of the code that it takes to set up these live activities. Then you just have to add in your own views. It's really super simple. So to get a quick look at what our view here on the screen actually looks like, you'll see that it's just a V stack, which again is like Flutter's column, and we have a text object. We've got our content view, which is the text you see in the middle, so that's just a switch statement based on the order status. And then lastly, our step progress bar that we built.
Cool. Yeah, and then this is just going through how we got the data in and all those updates. It actually works through push notifications, through Apple's push notification service. So in our case, we first off use the Cloud Firestore like Dart package or Flutter package to write your order to Firestore, which I'm sure everyone has done at least once. And then also, when we submit the order, we start our live activity with a method channel. So if you've done any plugin development or anything like that, it works just like that. It's just not in a separate plugin. It's like directly in the iOS code that's part of your Flutter project. So we just have that method channel to say start the lab activity. It calls the appropriate or API in Swift. It's a pretty small, it's like part of ActivityKit, I believe. All that's, you can find that online. But then it also gives you asynchronously a push token that represents that specific instance of the lab activity, and it's like a unique string. And so we also write that to Firestore. What's cool is because we have the Cloud Firestore in Flutter through CocoaPods, we already have the Cloud Firestore iOS SDK, so we don't even have to import that. We can just use it because it's already in the project through CocoaPods. So we write that also to that document in Firestore so that we know what the ID is. And then finally, we have a cloud function that gets triggered every time you update the status, and that runs, when you update the status. And it sends to Apple push notifications using that token it's like just a specially formatted push notification, like type live activity to update the data. And that's all it takes. I'd say the whole solution was 300 lines of code total, including like all the SwiftUI and everything. So really pretty simple. But next we're going to look at another demo. How about a home screen widget? Here, do you want to actually hold that for me? Yeah. Because I'll use this one. So for the home screen widget here, I'm going to show this. I'm going to demo this one here. I'll just go add a widget and scroll down and look for very yummy coffee. There we are. And you can see in modern iOS, it just has a preview of the widget right here, but I'll put it to the home screen. You can see that recent order with a bagel and a latte. Again, this is just SwiftUI code. We'll look at the code in a second. But yeah, this is just a nice widget showing off your recent order. It has a couple different sizes. We didn't actually go through all the steps of linking this up to like a quick reorder function or whatever. You definitely could, have like a one-tap reorder from your recent order from your widget, which I think would be really cool, for a coffee app to do. A little bit about the code for how that works. This is a lot of code at once. Again, this is not like a tutorial, so if you need, we can definitely look at it closer together. But again, it's just another widget configuration, just like Sam was showing you earlier. The only difference is this one is a static configuration instead of a activity configuration, and then just has a SwiftUI view in there. So in this case, a vstack and hstack, and I mean you can see what's in there. The only thing that's like unique is you have to give it a kind, like a unique ID. You give it a provider, which is how it gets data into the home screen widget. Works a little different than live activities because to save battery, they don't query very often. But you can read all about that on Apple's documentation. And then you have to give the supported families. So that's the sizes of widget you want to support. You can have the same widget be multiple sizes, which is pretty slick, I think. So that is that.
That's pretty cool, but can it work with Siri?
Let's find out. This is the biggest live demo. This is the scary one. And I was stupid and put the beta for Apple Intelligence, so we'll see how this works here. Place my most recent order on very yummy coffee. There it goes. So it did submit the order. If you saw the barista screen, I know you can't see it, it would be there. But yeah, so yes, it works with Siri. You can just place it with Siri. We also built that integration for the demo. Oh, I keep saying its name and it keeps trying to turn that off. So yeah, building that integration was also, I feel like we're broken records at this point, very easy. Just a little bit of Swift code. In this case, it's an app shortcut is what it's called. So you have to give it this app shortcut provider. It has a list of shortcuts. We only have one in our list. You give it a couple phrases you see there of like example phrases, but it doesn't have to be one for one. It just kind of uses that as an idea of how it works, but it's smart enough to you don't have to say exactly that phrase. And then you give it an intent you can see there. In this case, a submit recent order intent. And that code is right here. Again, it's just a struct that's extending intent. You give it a title and a description, and then you have to give it a perform function. This is an async function that can throw, so you can kind of do anything in here. In our case, we're fetching the most recent order from Firebase. We're giving that request confirmation dialog just to make sure you want to submit that order. See a recent orders list in there? That is actually just another SwiftUI view, so you can have custom views in those dialogs, and then assuming that it succeeds, then we'll submit the order, again, using, in our case, Firebase, but it could be, whatever logic you have, and then we give a resulting dialogue. And there's a lot more you can do with dialogues and stuff if you want to have a really, deep interaction. But that's, we're not like hand waving. This is literally the code that thing works. So I was surprised like how simple it was. You just need to know a little bit of Swift to get this done. What's cool about the intent, since we already have an intent, is it automatically goes to the Shortcuts app. So you could imagine like a morning routine that gets triggered maybe the same time every morning or when you get into your car, and maybe it gets your weather, maybe it starts your podcast, and then places your coffee order, your like regular order that you have saved automatically. That could be a really like dynamic interaction, and obviously could encourage people to order. Of course, this could work for all sorts of different domains, though, not just coffee. Like you could imagine, of course, any e-commerce, airlines like tracking your flight status. I don't know, pretty much anything, right, could benefit from quick, discrete actions like this. And when Apple Intelligence comes, this should all be integrated. So I think that's pretty slick. But there is one more thing. See, when you give a lot of talks to Flutter people, and it's always Google-based, you don't get to make fun of Apple. So we had to take advantage this time and do all the Appleisms here. We've been talking about Flutter and SwiftUI. That's what this talk was about. But what if I told you that by paying attention in this talk, you kind of already know all these other frameworks too? That's Jetpack Compose, React, and lots more, right? That's my pitch. The reason is because if you haven't noticed, Flutter and SwiftUI are very similar. All these frameworks are very similar. They're all kind of these modern reactive frameworks. And they all kind of share these three principles, I guess you could call them. They're all declarative. So all of them you just say, here's what I want the UI to look like. You're not manipulating it directly. They're all reactive, so you don't update the UI directly, like change the text directly. You change the state, and the full framework rebuilds, right? That's obviously how React works, and all of them. I don't need to list them all every time, I suppose. And they're all composable, so they have an emphasis on building small UI pieces that themselves do very little, but then you compose them together to create full applications that are really dynamic, but each individual component should be small in what it does. And since all of these frameworks share those same commonalities, if you master one, like let's say you master Flutter, you're already very close to being proficient in all of them, which I think is pretty neat. I think that learning that your Flutter superpowers can just translate over to other frameworks, that makes me sleep at night a little bit. So yeah, I think that's pretty cool. So with that, thank you guys so much, and yeah, we appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.